Hello everyone, welcome to the 160 Q&A practice. We're going to start off with plaintiff questioning. Ready? What time did he first get there? He got there at approximately 2 a.m. and that is the time he gave her a shot and said she had had a slight stroke? Yes. And at what time did he come back, if you recall? Approximately 10 o'clock the next day, and then he came back the last time at approximately 7:30. That's when he recommended to put her in the hospital. That was the next morning or the next evening? The next evening. Now, what was your wife's condition from the time the doctor first came up until he decided to put her in the hospital? She was absolutely lifeless. Do you mean there was no movement at all? No, nothing. No sound? No sound, nothing moved. And what was her appearance other than being motionless? Her appearance was good. Was she in this condition on the second and third visits of the doctor? Yes, she was. What did the doctor do or say at the time of the second visit? Well, his actual words I don't know. The effect was that he didn't see why she didn't snap out of it and that she probably would any minute, but he'd wait a little while and come back later. Did you have to call him each time, or did he come back on his own? He came back on his own. What about the third visit? On the third visit, she was the same way, and he said, well, I guess you'd better put her in the hospital. He went back to his office and made arrangements for me to take her to St. Mary's. St. Mary's Hospital? Yes. And as I understand it, she passed away in the hospital. Right. Nothing further. How long was she at St. Mary's Hospital before she died? Well, it was less than 24 hours. I think she was admitted at approximately 10 p.m., and I think death was somewhere around 9 p.m. the next evening. As far as you know, did your wife ever come out of it in the sense of speaking or being active again? No. And was Dr. Drake, as far as you know, the only doctor who saw your wife throughout this time? Oh no, he turned her over to another doctor at the hospital. Would that be Dr. Mack? Right. What did Dr. Mack or Dr. Drake do at the hospital? I don't know. They took her in the emergency ward and gave her a thorough examination and ran all their tests and everything. They took her upstairs and they had a nurse with her the whole time she was there. She was in ICU. Were you with her? I was at the hospital the whole time, but most of the time they had me out in the hall while they worked on her. Was Dr. Mack, if you know, a neurosurgeon or a neurologist? I haven't the slightest idea. Or does he have a specialty? I don't know. At a time like that, I didn't ask too many questions. I can imagine how you felt. And was an autopsy performed? Yes. Now from the autopsy, of course, we know that your wife had diabetes. Did you ever know that she had diabetes before her death? The only diabetic that I ever heard talk about was her mother. Did anyone tell you, even after her death, that she had diabetes? Only what the doctor said at the hospital. After she came out of the emergency room or ward, he said it was diabetes? Yes. Which doctor said that she had diabetes? Dr. Mack. He told me she had probably had it for quite some time and just never knew it, or else she ignored the symptoms. Okay, so we're going to switch transcripts. This is going to be plaintiff attorney. Ready? In March of 2007, were you living with Scott Allen? Yes, I was. Were you married to him at that time? Yes, I was. Was there any pending court action for dissolution of your marriage at that time? No, there wasn't. Did you have a job and were you working at that time? No, I was not. Whom were you dependent upon for the necessities of your life at that time? My husband. Was that Scott? Yes, it was. Was this his only marriage? Yes, it was. And you had one child of that marriage? No, we had 3 children. 1 died. Then you had 2 living children? 2 children. What are their names? Carrie and Mark. How old is Carrie now? 12 years old. How old is Mark? 9 years old. As far as you know, did your husband have any other children? No. At the time of his death, was anyone else living in your household? Both of our children, Carrie and Mark, and my mother. Are both children in school? Yes. Does your mother work? No, she does not. Insofar as you know, was your husband supporting anyone else other than you, the children, and your mother? No. During the last 1 year of your husband's life, were you familiar with the kind of work he was doing for the Utah Chemical Company? Yes, I was. And what was his job title, if you know, during that last year? Supervisor. Any particular department that you know of? I think he was in the Chemical Research Department. I am going to ask you about a typical day for your husband. Can you tell us when he would normally arise to go to work? About 6 o'clock. That is 6 a.m. or p.m.? In the morning. And what time would he get to work in Salt Lake City? About 7. Was that when he was required to report to work at 7? No. Why would he get there at 7 then? He had to set up jobs for his assistants. This was his normal habit to arrive at 7? Yes, it was. What time would he come home? Around 6. The men in his department stopped at 4:30? That is right. Well, then why would he not get home earlier than 6 o'clock if the work stopped at 4:30? He had to do paperwork on the computer. How many days a week did he work? Again, we are speaking about the last 1 year. How many days a week did he actually work? Usually 6. Well, did he work every Saturday? Well, there were very few he didn't work. Are you familiar with what his job was at Utah Chemical? What he did? During the last 5 years, he was a supervisor. You know specifically what he was doing? Did he discuss it with you? Yes. From your conversations with your husband, what is your understanding as to what he did at work? Well, he had men working for him. They had to conduct experiments and tests. He listened to the complaints of workers and their problems, and he also had to listen to management. At the end of the day, did he ever talk about his work with you? Yes, he did. After work and when he would discuss his work with you, what did he say? He was under a lot of pressure. He was nervous about the careless way the company handled the chemicals and their disposal. What were his exact words as far as you can recall? What would he say? Well, he actually expressed himself by saying he was very worried about exposure and contamination to himself and the other employees. All right, so I'm going to switch transcripts one more time. It's going to be defense questioning. Now, did your husband join in that information? Yes, he did. Now, you subsequently sold that home, didn't you? Yes, we did. And did you pay back any of this $120,000 amount at the time you sold that house? No, we did not. Did Mr. Netter, your ex-husband, ask you to pay back that amount to his parents? No, he did not. Was there any discussion regarding whether or not that should be? No, there wasn't. Did you then use the proceeds from the sale of that home to purchase another home? Yes, we did. Was there any discussion at the time you purchased that other home that this money should be used as a loan? No. In fact, there were never any discussions until the time of this divorce that would be a loan? Correct. I have no further questions, Your Honor. All right, Mr. Anderson. Nothing further of this witness. All right, you may step down. Thank you, ma'am. Any further evidence, Mr. Anderson? Yes, Your Honor. I'll call the petitioner. Mr. Netter, please come forward. Please raise your right hand. You do solemnly state that the testimony you shall give in the matter now pending before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. Please be seated. Will you state your full name for the record? Steve John Netter. Go ahead, counsel. Thank you. Mr. Netter, do you recall receiving a check for $120,000? Yes, I do. And do you remember approximately when that was? Approximately January 29th, a few days after. May I approach, Your Honor? Yes. Showing you Exhibit 14, would you take a look at that? Is that the check that you received? Yes, it is. Do you recognize the writing on the face of that check? Yes, I do. And whose writing is that? That is my father's handwriting. And there's a notation that says loan on there. Is that correct? Yes. Is that his writing also? Yes, it is. Do you recall that being on the check when you received it? Absolutely. All right, so that concludes our Q&A practice for the 160 class. Have a great day.